And we have Tom from Trax on stage. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom. I'm from Trax. I'm one of the founders. Oh my God, it's bright. So Trax is a social marketplace for music. I think it's good to sort of start a little bit by setting the scene. My presentation structure, fairly simple, standard kind of startup pitch deck. I'm going to run through the problem, at least how we see it. Then talk about what we perceive the solution to be, both in Web3 and why we're building on ICP. I'm going to take a look at traction from our end, how it's been going so far, quick look at the product, and then some more stuff about our business. So, the problem. The music industry is in dire straits. That's a pun for anyone who knows. So we really believe at Trax that music artists deserve better. The first issue is pay. The majority of music artists are dependent on streaming payouts, which have been going down year on year. If any of you have ever put music on a streaming service, you're going to be paid fractions of a cent per stream, which works great if you're Drake, but doesn't work for anybody else. Second issue is that artists are typically last to get paid. Traditional sort of Web2 music industry, there are a lot of middlemen, record labels, digital streaming providers. They stand between the artist and the fan. The fan is who's paying the artist at the end of the day. And the hope with Trax is to build a bridge. The final thing really is that there's no other option for artists in Web2 at the moment. And that's why we're seeing some success with Web3 music, which has been blossoming recently. Lots of artists discovering music NFTs, coming over to Web3, and earning much more than they've ever been able to earn. As you can see here, kind of, well, I'll talk about it now. We did some market research about maybe 3 months ago where we spoke to Web3 artists, non-Web3 artists, music fans, and I've highlighted sort of some of the main interesting pieces of insight that we got out of that piece of research. So at the top, lots of fans would be willing to pay for exclusive content. You know, have a think, who's your favorite music artist? How much would you be willing to pay for a new album, for example? 4,718 minutes of streaming. That's a lot of time. If you think about it, it's a lot of streams, and that's only to earn £12.50 on Spotify. Another issue that I'll kind of touch on later is about funding. You know, if you're an artist nowadays, you have to go to a record label to get fronted, to then be able to perform, sort out tours, record an album, etc. Lots of artists are struggling to find the funding to have their first concert. We don't think that's particularly good. And finally, really a sort of unhappiness with the current system. Artists aren't happy per se with how much they are earning from these streaming platforms. So, what are we doing at Trax? What's our sort of thesis? And it's this, it's to put monetization back in the hands of the creator. The first reason to do that is that you can have better pay, far better pay. The artist pays, or the fan pays the artist directly. And lots of music fans are aware of how artists are getting shafted in Web2 music. Secondly, more control. Lots of artists are dictated to by their label what sort of music they should produce, when they should put their album out, who they should feature with. With Web3, you're really in full control of both your community, but also when you want to release your music, what sort of music you want to release. And finally, the key element really is Web3. So we're a Web3 platform, as opposed to relying on paper contracts, centralized servers for storing of files. The idea here is to bring artists into the fray and to sort of create a new standard for music and music engagement. Bit on traction, some nice graphs, which is always good to see. We've had some success with artists joining. We've been onboarding artists since about the start of the year. We're about we're in May now. We're over 150 artists have signed up, all different backgrounds. Some people who've previously been signed to labels, some people who are just starting out. But we've really seen a lot of interest in the platform and what we're building. From a user perspective, we ran a viral waitlist campaign for a couple of months. That brought in a huge number of emails, and then we were able to use funded to sort of kick off our fundraising, and that was great. And finally, social following. We put a lot of time into creating great content, building a social community, and we've had a lot of success, so over 1 million impressions now across our social channels. On the product itself, I won't show a video. You can go to our website, app.onlyontrax.com. The alpha is currently live. We're releasing our first batch of features, which is what I'm going to talk about now, in the next couple of weeks. So we're really excited. The plan is basically to onboard the artists who we've signed up so far onto the platform, get people to start using it, implement some feedback, and then move from there. So, Internet Computer, why we're all here. We were previously building a different project actually on Polygon, and the experience was not as enjoyable as it's been on the Internet Computer. But we really chose to come and bring Trax to the Internet Computer and build it here for a few different reasons. So first, and the first batch of features that we're focused on is payments. Now, I don't want to go to dummy level, but in crypto, payments are peer-to-peer. In Web 2, payments aren't peer-to-peer. So if you want to facilitate payment between two parties, you need to use something like Stripe. You need to use multiple banks probably. And there are fees all along the way. And what that does is it cuts down the ultimate amount of money that the creator gets at the end of a sort of payment cycle. So we have just, well, we did it yesterday actually, integrated tipping into our app. So now artists can receive ICP, down the line Bitcoin, and hopefully more currencies after that. So we're going to have tipping, pay-per-view, subscriptions. There are lots of ways that artists can be earning, and we want to facilitate all of those. The second is DAO governance. The SNS, I think it's causing some controversy at the moment, especially on forums. We hopefully want to have an SNS if we're allowed to. But the idea for our SNS is really to generate engagement. So to have a sort of a DAO that runs on top of the platform where artists and fans on the platform can both reward engagement, but also take part in platform decisions, the moderation of content, censorship. There are lots of issues for a platform like us, and we think a DAO can actually help us solve some of those issues. End-to-end decentralization. That's the big selling point, I would say, of building on the Internet Computer. We're not fully decentralized now, but the idea is that ICP gives you everything that you need to be able to build out our entire application on chain. So we use a handful of Web 2 systems, and the idea is that we will transition from Web 2 to a fully decentralized model. Well, I'll show you the roadmap sort of at the end. And finally, I think it's just important to touch on, there's been a lot of good work recently, Carbon Crowd, Definity, on sort of carbon neutrality and how good ICP is comparatively for the environment. So those are sort of 4 driving factors behind our decision to come and build on the Internet Computer. Business model. I think it's important, and it's maybe something that's sometimes forgotten by Web3 projects, is that we're meant to be building a business. It's important to have a business model. Ours is very simple, and we have a goal by 2025 for 1 million transactions on Trax. Ambitious, maybe not, maybe it is. We did a bit of research when we were putting this together, the sort of amounts that you can expect from a transaction on a music platform like ours, which is sort of like a Web3 Bandcamp, and that's about 59 pence. That's 70 cents. And so we have a kind of revenue target of about 700K by the end of 2025. So market opportunity. As I said at the start, the music industry has actually been struggling with revenue for a long time. Adoption is there. Everyone uses Spotify, everyone uses Apple Music, but streaming is causing this race to the bottom for value in the music market. If you look at it compared to something like gaming, gaming's been shooting up recently. Music continues to plummet. But regardless, it's still a multi-billion-dollar market. Recent valuation around 17 billion. Now, obviously, that's dominated at the moment by streaming services, but there is this subset of the market which is sort of platforms and social marketplaces like Patreon, Bandcamp, And that's where we see ourselves. So that makes up about $2.2 billion of that market, and we're looking to go for a 5% market share, which would put us sort of equal footing to Patreon. That's the goal.
Tom, you have about 1 minute.
Sure. I'll quickly run through this. Maybe you can see this, maybe you can't. Really, the idea for Trax is to be a Web 2 experience, but with Web 3 features. Roadmap, probably the most important thing. We are just about to launch. We're a couple of weeks away from launching. We've onboarded our first batch of early bird artists. And then we have some exciting things coming up. So first of which is to sort of integrate Bitcoin, allow artists to earn Bitcoin. Then potentially add NFTs. Music NFTs is a growing sort of subset of the market. We'd be stupid to miss out on it. Then our DAO, hopefully via an SNS sale. We have a goal for 10,000 transactions on the platform by the end of the year. And then we're looking to really sort of go mainstream. Mobile application, creating some features like Curate to Earn, which rewards fans for engaging with the platform. And then we have a goal of 100,000 transactions next year. Team, that's me at the top. You can come find us afterwards. We've been working together in Web3 for a couple of years. Luke and I, who's the founder of Plug, worked on a previous startup, sold that. So we do have some experience. We might be young, but we do. Bit on the raise, I'll leave that up there because I know we have some investors. It's a small seed round we're looking to raise, and hopefully that gives us funds to sort of grow and build what I've just been talking about. I think I've run over.
All right, thank you. Yeah, first question I have for you is, what is your connection to music? Are you a musician, or what drives your passion for to spend the next few years of your life in this field?
I'm a music fan. I never worked in the music industry, and I think some people see it as a weakness. I personally don't. I think there's very successful founders of previous music projects who'd never worked in the music industry before. No, but I was a music fan. I was previously working in the finance sector. The first company we sold was Financial Data. The project on Polygon was a DeFi project. Finance takes it out of you. So we decided we wanted to basically move. And you know, our team is made up of, I would say, people who are passionate about music, amateur musicians themselves. We've built a really good sort of community of artists and people around us. So it was an initial worry, is like we don't have much music industry experience, but it's been good so far.
Great. Yeah, passion is all it takes, not experience. With that, maybe over to the investors. Anyone of you have a question for Tom?
Maybe one question on music rights. Like if you, let's say somebody comes who's already signed with other labels, or another label, like can you address that? Or is it mainly for artists who just launched a brand?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've been speaking to some labels so far, and they are excited by this because it's another avenue for monetization for their artists. So they receive, you know, percentage of the payout from Spotify or the streaming services. This allows them to potentially earn more, potentially much more, but also be in much sort of more control over what they're putting out. They can dictate how much their percentage is, and obviously if it's running on smart contracts, they have a lot more trust in the system that they're going to be paid out on time, in real time. So no, I'd say labels are actually quite excited about it. They don't perceive it as a threat, per se. So yeah.
I can see why artists would want to do this, because they'd get paid more. My question is, how do you break the network effects of Spotify and Apple Music from the user perspective? Presumably, they would also have to pay more to the artists, and I'm perfectly happy paying pennies every month to Spotify.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you are. There is enough people who are sort of diehard fans of certain artists who will follow that artist to whatever platform that might be. Whether that's Apple Music, Spotify. The thing that we're trying to really focus on and carve out a niche is on exclusive content and sort of a closer fan-artist relationship. You know, being able to privately message the artist, being able to engage in kind of a smaller fan community. Maybe you're purchasing stuff that's not on the streaming platform. So if you angle yourself more on the sort of exclusive side of things and being able to put out content for your super fans, your diehard fan community, this is a platform for doing that. And then you have your you have Spotify and Apple Music for that wider distribution. I don't think that might never change. Streaming is so embedded now in music industry culture. It's going to be difficult to fully break that, but we think this is a step in the right direction.
So I'm going to put my ecosystem hat investor on here. I think audio as a category is a great category to go after as an ecosystem, right? Same with video and different things like that. How are you thinking about what you're building from an ecosystem perspective, right? Because one of the beautiful things about Web3 and what makes Web3 really valuable, right, is for the ability for other people to be able to compose what I'm doing into what they're doing, right? So what about what you've built enables other things to build some form of audio streaming into what they're doing? For example, somebody wants to build a video game and they want to stream audio through that video game, they should totally be able to tap into your catalog of audio stems or streams or something to that effect, right? And the reason I ask that is, we're so many years away from millions and billions of users streaming music on Web3, right? It's just going to take a while, and it has nothing to do with the fact that lots of people do that. But how are you building an app that's like, hey, let me demo what I've built to the world on how you do that, and then ultimately, how can I enable other developers to build some form of audio composition into what they're doing? Because I feel like you have to kind of go after both and be an ecosystem builder yourself.
No, I completely agree, and I understand where you're coming from. I think from my perspective and the way we're looking at it is this is a great sort of platform that grows awareness of ICP ecosystem. It can almost be a showcase of what ICP is all about with, on-chain content storage, fast payments in Bitcoin. So we really want to be one of these early platforms that's showcasing the power of the network. I agree with you. I think it's just a case of time that we would have to build features that are requested if people are wanting to sort of build on top of us. Then we're acting almost like a protocol as opposed to a platform. In the immediate term, I see us more as a self-service platform for artists looking to enter Web3. And that's definitely how we are kind of proposing ourselves to artists who we're talking to. And they like it because they might not have the time or the mental energy to learn how to, mint NFTs, distribute their own NFTs. Having an easy self-service platform where you can literally upload something, set the price, and share it. And that's the idea with Trax. So that's what we're focusing on first. But yeah, I think I agree with you. It's time. We'll see over the next few years how this develops, whether we add API supports and developer documentation, stuff like that.
Great. I think we have time for one more question from the audience. I think there was one here. Yeah.
First off, are you working with any of the existing, let's call it, music creation platforms for independent musicians, like CD Baby, Reverb Nation, any of those platforms?
Not actively working with them. We had an early conversation with Distro Nation, which is a subsidiary of Live Nation. They really liked it. I think they kind of want to see us launch, get some traction, and then they'll come back. So no, not specifically.
And then my second and last question for now. I'll talk to you later. Integration with the more, let's call it the traditional pay schemes that are in music today. So they all have an embedded code. They're automatically paid royalties based on their publisher rights and other things. How is that manifested on the Trax platform?
It's all slightly different because those systems have been set up to operate within Web 2 and Web 2 infrastructure. So when you're building in Web 3, it's all peer-to-peer. So we're working on something to do with royalty sharing at the moment, where an artist can add another artist to that track or that album. They can set the royalty splits, and then obviously as those transactions are going through, the splits are done in real time and it's trustless. So that's one way you can kind of sort of adopt Web 3 and replace those sort of Web 2 systems that you were discussing. I think some of it's time, probably impatience, and the younger generation is not so well, we were more impatient. They don't want to wait for the record deal. They don't want to wait for the eventual payout from the publisher, from the streaming rights. It's all sort of how quickly can I get money in my pocket? And this is as close to real time, we think, as you can get in music at the moment.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.